عليهم من شيء فتطردهم فتكون من الظالمين. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إذا أراد الله بعبده خيرا عجل له العقوبة في الدنيا، وإذا أراد الله بعبده الشر أمسك عنه بذنوبه حتى يوافي به يوم القيامة، أو حتى يوافي به يوم القيامة، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, fellow youngsters, welcome to our college halaqa and high school halaqa, inshallah. And I hope everyone is well and if they're enjoying their summer time with their family. Hope everyone is safe and healthy and in good spirit with iman and taqwa. It is obvious that having a session that is not accessible physically because due to COVID-19, the option of using virtual lectures and series is a supplement, but it does not, compensate for what we can enjoy in the company of angels together. And fortunately, we have access to resources that we can benefit from. But at the same time, brothers and sisters, it's nothing compared to sitting together and building upon the energy that is in the room or in the masjid when we're talking and listening together. Inshallah, I hope that you brothers and sisters can continue to attend every Thursday and all the lectures which are online available, but every Thursday, 7:30, and tune in for the minimum for the high school and college halaqa, which is not just for you or for me, but it's for all of us to refresh our iman, our spirits, especially now in summer where we were unable to attend the masjid and we were confined to our homes during COVID-19. There's something we always need, and that is spiritual nourishment and spiritual growth and reminder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. It is important that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you remind your companions who are righteous that this reminder continues to benefit them. We all are learning, we're all benefiting from these reminders. Brothers and sisters, as we are speaking about the conversion series of individuals who converted to Islam, and I restate this over and over, the reason why we talk about them is to contextualize where they came from. You know how hard it is to leave bad habits. And I think leaving bad habits is a discussion itself, but to leave a lifestyle that is, grossed into wrong and vice and idol worshiping and sin and alcohol and womanizing. Now these people, these men and women, have to restructure their entire belief, and then the entire social society, friends, relatives become enemies, and how they're able to not become Muslims, but become Sahaba who are the guiding stars for this ummah. Tonight, inshallah, I want to share with you, as we are going through COVID-19 and also in the midst of racial injustice, I'd like to speak about another person who in a society was discriminated because of his race, his social status, just like we spoke about Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anh, a black man who was a slave, but it was able to prosper in the company of the Prophet ﷺ and not just become a Sahabi, an ordinary Muslim, but from leadership of Islam, from the perspective of Islam, which liberated him from the shackles of bondage. It made him a leader where the Prophet ﷺ sent him as a leader, as a general for 7 campaigns where he led thousands of people. And this was unheard of in their society. America, after 300-400 years, we're talking about 400 years, was able to elect a black president, and yet is unable to elect a woman. What I'm trying to say is that the Prophet ﷺ, not in 400 years, not in 300 years, not in 200 years, within a span of few years, small amount, less than a decade, he was able to win over the hearts of the Muslims and the people who accept Islam and bring the synergy and equality within the society. And that is really, really, worthy of listening and talking about. And today I want to talk about another noble companion who shared similar background, but he wasn't the stepson of the Prophet ﷺ or adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ, wasn't really related to the Prophet ﷺ. So his situation was a little different, and that is Khabbab radiallahu anhu. Khabbab is a very interesting Sahabi, and I want you all to stick with me, and we'll talk about him inshallah. Next week we'll do Ubadah bin Samit, how they converted, why they converted, and what were the challenges of the conversion. Khabbab bin Arat, also known as Abu Abdullah. Anyone know anything about Khabbab bin Arat? If in the stories of the Seerah, you know one incident of Khabbab? Can you share one incident of Khabbab if you are on the chat group, just to refresh our knowledge, our information on Khabbab ibn Arat radiallahu ta'ala an. Khabbab radiallahu an was, of course, one of the earliest Sahaba to accept Islam. That is what makes him very unique. And that also makes, we know this, ما نراك إلا اتبعك إلا اتبعك إلا هم أرادلنا بادي الرأي. One of the accusations against the Prophet ﷺ and previous prophets were that we only find that the majority of the followers of the Prophet ﷺ were slaves, poor, and people who had hard time in society. Of course, there was Abu Bakr's and Uthman's, but this was the common argument of the leaders of the Mala, the leadership of the community, and those who were blessed by God and wealth and status. This is وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعْكَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَادِلُنَا بَادِيَ الرَّأْيِ. We only see those who have no status in our community, they're following you, which means you're really not an accomplished person. If your following is so low and status-wise and financial status-wise, you must be doing something wrong. Why isn't that great influential people are not following you? Them meaning they're smarter, they're more accepted. Why are they not following you? لولا أنزل هذا القرآن وعلى رجل من القريتين عظيم. They accuse the Prophet, why was the Quran revealed to you? You were an orphan. It should be revealed to Urwa bin Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, or Walid ibn al-Mughira. These were people who were noble in their society. And so these were constant social objections to the Prophet and his companions. Khabbab bin Arad radiallahu an is amongst those who accepted Islam. There's an interesting part of this that I first want to tell you, that where he accepted Islam, and then how the Prophet had to had struggles with balancing his da'wah to the simple, humble people of Mecca, and then the struggle of calling Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, and the likes of Uqba to Islam. It's a very challenging struggle, especially if you're a leader. You have to accommodate people, and at the same time, you are eager for the success of the community of Islam. Khabbab radiallahu anhu is considered to be the 6th Muslim to accept Islam. And that is very high accolade for a person to have. People imagine we don't know, we should know more about this person. If he's the 6th person to accept Islam, that person should be the number 6 person in our mind when it comes to knowing about the noble people around the Prophet ﷺ. He accepted Islam before Dar al-Arqam was even established. Now Dar al-Arqam was the first institution, the first place a Sahaba would go to. Arqam was one of the first people to accept Islam, a youngster who hosted the Prophet ﷺ. So that's how they know him. And Khabbab before Islam was known to be a person that would make swords in the Jahiliyyah. He was Sana' Siyuf. He was a person that would sharpen swords and carve swords, and he was into armor development. When he accepted Islam, people noticed it, and right away they started to, he was a slave. He was a slave that was freed by Anmar. He was a servant. Originally, he was sold as a servant in Mecca, and then finally he accepted Islam. And then, of course, when he accepted Islam, people started to torture him, abuse him. And the torture of Khabbab is different, than Bilal. Khabbab used to say this himself. He said, people think Bilal, was the person who went through the most torture. Like he went through the most sacrifice. He says to Umar al-Khattab, no, that's not. I can't disagree with the torture that came to Bilal, but I went through much more extreme situations. They would put iron on his neck, and they would put him in the heat, and they would put hot iron, not just iron, hot heated iron on his head, and they would make his head burn. And then they would take charcoal and burning charcoal and pour and place it on his back. And his face and his stomach, his chest will be against the burning sand. And the burning charcoal would extinguish from the fat of his back, meaning it would just sizzle into his skin and his muscle and his fat. And that's how much torture they would do to him constantly. And he would pray to the Prophet, please make dua, Allah makes it easy. Finally, the Prophet, when he saw some of the torture that went to Khabbab, he said, Allahumma ansur Khabbab, oh Allah, help Khabbab, help Khabbab. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the way for Khabbab radiallahu anh. It is interesting that Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh asked him, how is it possible that you went through more torture than Bilal? We know Bilal's, zalim, Umayyah, how much torture he made him go through, where he dragged him and put heavy rocks on him. And Bilal's story is very common. But he said, no, you guys don't know my story in my narrative. He says that he had Umar radiallahu anhu, he said he moved his shirt off his back, and he had Umar radiallahu anhu see his back. And Umar radiallahu anhu saw his back, he started crying. He said, I have never seen a back this tortured in my life. It said that you could take your hand, your finger, and literally put it inside his back, and it would disappear. Fingers would disappear. They go deep in because of the holes and the scars that he had deep in his back. It was just very dangerous, very nasty in that sense. And the famous narration that we all know about Khabbab radiallahu anh is that one narration where it's a very famous narration, so I'm going to share with you in Bukhari and then give you a little bit more details of Khabbab. It says, and Abdullah bin Abdullah, he's Abi Abdullah Khabbab bin Ard radiallahu anh. He is known as the father of Abdullah. He says that we went through so much torture in the time of the Prophet Shakawna ila Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We complained to the Prophet of amount the torture that we were going through. And when we came to the Prophet huwa mutawassidun fi dhill al-Kaaba, he was reclining on and he was resting or sitting in the shade of the Kaaba. And we went to the Prophet فَقُلْنَا أَلَا تَسْتَنصِرُ لَنَا أَلَا تَدْعُوا لَنَا. O Prophet of Allah, will you not ask Allah for help for us? Will you not, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the difficulty? And the Quran speaks about this same verse when the Sahaba had these questions, especially pertaining to Khabbab and the Sahaba. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثُلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. Some Mufassirin say this verse refers to Khabbab and the Sahaba asking Allah, Mata Nasrullah, Mata Nasrullah, because they had gone through years of torture and brutal torture. And the Prophet ﷺ, sitting back, he says this to Khabbab. He could lift his hand and things will get better. But the Prophet's message is not to raise his hand and relieve pain. The Prophet's message is to teach the Sahaba that through this pain there is a reward. And this reward is far greater than the pain that you're going through. And it also sets the tone for us to recognize that deen comes through struggle. It comes through sacrifice. To say that it's not going to come without struggle, without a sacrifice, that would be a exaggerated statement or almost incorrect. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. You have to look at the lives of prophets and the companions of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Islam and the essence of Islam came through struggle. They had to sacrifice. Some sacrificed their wealth, some sacrificed their life, some sacrificed their family. This was, in return of that, they were able to embody the richness and the value of Islam. And those who had the most struggle, they got the most return in this dunya. And the return was not only the reward of akhirah, but also the satisfaction and pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya, knowing that Allah is pleased. So huwa mutawassidun burdatun lahu fi dhill al-Kaaba. Prophet ﷺ is reclining and he says, and the Prophet ﷺ right away takes Khabbab to history lane. And the factual responsibility of a prophet is to state the facts of what's happened in the past. And he says, I also say this, I want to say this very clearly, that the early generation, subhanAllah, I heard this from a scholar very nicely. He said the early generation of the Sahaba had to rely on the stories of the prophets to recognize what their struggles were so they can get some counsel and comfort. Today, we rely back on the Sahaba and the Prophets, but more importantly to the Sahaba and the earlier generation to see what they went through while we also go through our struggle, while we also go through our insecurities. Well, every time there's this Islamophobia, rise of Islamophobia, we always go back to Khabbab, we always go back to Bilal, we always go back to Umar, we always go back to Abu Bakr, and their narrations and their stories give us comfort. But who did Ammar have? Who did in the much of the Quran was not revealed. That's something that I want to say. Very little of the Quran was revealed at this time. This is early Islam. You don't have the stories of Musa where Fir'aun is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave help to Musa against Fir'aun. We don't have these stories of Yunus and Yusuf. Yusuf's story comes much later. Yunus' story is the first story in the Quran. That's true. In Surah Qalam, it is the first story, but all the stories are not there. Ayyub's story is not all there. It's coming in bits and segments. So you have to understand, where do the Sahaba find comfort if they don't have the Quran revealed? Every time I open the Quran and I read قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُ بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي اللَّهِ in the time of grief, it is very comforting. But where does Khabbab, where does Ammar, where does Bilal, where does Suhaib ibn Sinan, where do they find their comfort? Where does Khadija find comfort? So the Prophet ﷺ says to Khabbab, قَدْ كَانَ مَنْ قَبْلَكُمْ. Let me tell you something about people before you. So he has to go back to make them understand that this deen comes with a struggle. قَدْ كَانَ مَنْ قَبْلَكُمْ يُؤْخَذُ الرَّجُلُ. A person will be grabbed because of his deen or her deen. It's not because they were just discriminating because of his race or his language. It was because of their deen. فَيُؤْخَذُ الرَّجُلُ فَيُحْفَرْ لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. They would dig a hole into the ground, a ditch. فَيُجْعَلُ فِيهَا. Then this person will be placed into this ditch. ثُمَّ يُؤْتَى بِالْمِنْشَارِ. Then they will come with a saw, right? فَيُوضَعُ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ. And they will put the saw right on the center of his head. فَيُجْعَلُ نِصْفَيْنِ. And they will slice him in half. I mean, this reading the Arabic and translating it sounds so, light on the tongue. But brothers and sisters, taking someone, putting him into the ground, basically, he's, all the way buried to his shoulders where he can't even move his arms and he can't move his feet. He's basically buckled into the earth. He's totally, contained, and he's in a situation where he can't defend himself. Now in front of this alive person, breathing human, innocent person, they bring a saw and his head is out of the ground. The vulnerable situation of this person. فَيُؤْخَذُ الْمِنْشَارِ فَيُوضَعُ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ. And it was put on the head of this person. And what would happen next? They would cut the head in half. Brutal. And وَيُمْشَطُ بِأَمْشَادِ الْحَدِيدِ. In some parts of the past, they would take combs of iron, combs made of iron, and they would skin these innocent people who believed in God, in the oneness of God, and they would tear the skin about. It's a maduna lahmihi wa azmi. They would literally go all the way to the bone, and they would scratch off all their skin and their meat till they'll get to the bone of that person. Brothers and sisters, you and I know a small, dry skin or irritating skin or scab, how much it pains us. Even a very strong person, healthy person, a small exposure of the skin or a scab, it makes us so restless. Brothers and sisters, what we're talking about is iron just being combs made of iron, heated iron, just literally slicing through the body of this person. مَا يَصُدُّهُ ذَلِكَ عَنْ دِينِهِ. Even that will not allow or make the person leave their Islam or jeopardize their principle and sway them away from the belief of God. They would stay firm. So much torture went through. And look what's going on. The Prophet ﷺ is not getting up. Logically, if someone complains to you about dhulm, you get up and say, where's the dhulm? Let me go talk to the person who's a dhalim. Second, at least raise your hands. That's what we're taught. If you know there's a dhalim, someone's oppressing, you get up and you fight against them. Second, you at least make dua. Nobody usually says, oh, you're going through hardship. Let me tell you that a narration of other people who have gone through hardship. It's not an orthodox way of dealing with someone that's going through difficulty, especially dhulm. But the Prophet ﷺ knows that their situation is so tight. The Prophet ﷺ, they dare get up and try to fight the Quraysh. They will all get killed. And he could raise his hands, but like I said, of course the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands at night, prayed for his companions, but he's trying to set the mind of the companions that the Islam and Iman comes with struggle. And then the Prophet ﷺ didn't want Habab or you or me to leave with this pessimistic, dull, gloomy, depressed mindset. Oh, we're just going to live in misery till it's all over. No. That's not how the Prophet ﷺ wants us to be. Neither does Islam promote us to be victimized. Prophet ﷺ said, Wallahi, لَيُتِمَّنَّ اللَّهُ هَذَا الْأَمْرِ. Let me say this very clear, Khabbab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this deen flourish. حتى يسير الراكب من صنعاء إلى حضرموت لا يخاف إلا الله والذئب على غنمي ولكنكم تستعجلون. Very beautiful. He said, I swear to Allah, I swear by Allah that this deen will get completed. It would reach all corners of the world. And a time will come, there will be so much peace and aman in the world that a person can travel from Sana'a ila Hadramaut. Now people will say Sana'a is in Yemen, Hadramaut is also, Sana'a is the capital of Yemen, Hadramaut is a city in Yemen also where Salih alayhi salam is buried. Hadramaut is called Hadramaut because هنا حضر صالح عليه السلام الموت. This is where the angel of death appeared in front of Salih alayhi salam, Hadramaut. So you are looking at these two cities which are in the same country, Yemen. Why Sana'a and Hadramaut? This is a good question. I always had this question. Why did he not say min Sana'a ila Makkah or min Makkah ila Medina? Why the city in? At that time, the most dangerous place in the world that was known to the society and civilization was this area of Sana'a and Hadramaut. It was so dangerous, no one could travel there in the day, forget the night. There were looters, there were robbers, there were people who would kill and raid any caravan that went by. It was just such a dangerous place to go and travel through. If you think about it, one of the most dangerous cities in the United States is Detroit, Flint, Chicago. There are many other cities, and when you think about these cities, you would never imagine that they could be prosperity or aman, safety. Malcolm X talked about this, and also we have these conversations with people all the time. I talk about this all the time with Dr. Shah, particularly. The only way the revival of inner city and a community that is completely devoid of education, health, social, justice just provided to them, the only way we can see any resemblance of it is, inshallah, through Islam. Islam, the only way to remove these people out of hardship and gang violence and killing and all the things that can happen in any community is Islam. When Islam comes, automatically things should become better. Now, the counter argument to this could be, well, one of the most violent countries in the world are Muslim countries. And I'm just speaking my mind here. They would say one of the most violent countries, devil's advocate, right? One of the most violent countries in the world are Muslim countries. If you look at Yemen, Syria, Libya, so you see these countries, there's so much violence. And I say that the violence in these countries are not on the basis of their own, choice, based on their own choice. These are tyrants ruling over them, or is Western influences that have made these proxy wars just to, divide and benefit from the resources that are in those countries. Look at Iraq. It was fine completely. The currency of Iraq was the highest currency before they were in a state of war. You could say the same things about other countries in the world. Syria was beautiful. It was thriving. Yes, there was a dictator there. But the violence that you see, if you see it through a very geopolitical lens and just not on the surface base, they were very beautiful countries, thriving countries. But external influences have their agenda to destabilize these Muslim countries for their own, benefit. But overall, Islam is such a powerful, beautiful religion. If it's brought in its true essence into a community which is suffering, like the way the Prophet ﷺ brought it, it will remove the hardships. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. A time will come that one of the most criminal communities, one of the most dangerous communities and the most dangerous place to travel, that part of the world will become one of the most peaceful places in the world. من حضرموت صنعاء إلى حضرموت. And it's going to happen very close. And it happened within the next 10 years, 20 years from this narration. It didn't happen over a century. No, it happened right. And they would have no one to fear except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what ذِئْبُ عَلَى غَنَمِ, the Prophet extended it more, where even a wolf will not attack a sheep because there will be so much, even wild animals will have justice, meaning when it comes to animal welfare, there will be enough for even animals to eat and consume, that they won't have to ever attack a shepherd's animals. There would just be peace in land and in the beast and the humans. There'll be peace everywhere. Can you imagine? Right? وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. We're talking about peace in animals which cannot coexist. A sheep or a goat and a wolf, they're supposed to, one is supposed to devour the other person, but there's going to be a complete harmony even in the wild animal, in these creatures. Can you imagine how much peace there would be in humans who are supposed to be more intellectual than these animals? وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. But verily, we are very hasty. And humans are created hasty. We want things like this. This is a narration that I really like. I really enjoy talking about because it really sets well with the narrative of what's happening to the Muslim Ummah and how we are struggling, how Muslims are mazloom, oppressed all across the world, and there isn't anyone to help them. Muslims have turned their backs upon Muslims, and of course, what to hope from anyone else. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. We continue to make dua, we continue to ask Allah for help. But Khabbab bin Arad radiallahu anhu was one of those who came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked the Prophet ﷺ for this. I wanted to share a very interesting narration of Khabbab bin Arad radiallahu anhu that I feel like it gives you his loyalty that he had to the Prophet ﷺ. It says that when the battle of Badr was taking place, and it was the first time the Muslims and the non-Muslims of Mecca were going against each other. Khabbab bin Arad radiallahu anhu was a man who was in security at the Prophet the entire night, the eve of Badr, the entire night. He was there watching the Prophet ﷺ, guarding the Prophet ﷺ against the Quraysh. And he the next day he asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, I never saw you, the way you prayed. He said, لَقَدْ صَلَّيْتَ لَيْلَةَ صَلَاةً مَا رَأَيْتُكَ صَلَّيْتَ نَحْوَهَا. And he said, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا Rasulullah. O Prophet of Allah, may my mother and my father be sacrificed to you, upon you. I saw you pray salah last night. I never saw you pray like that before. And you got to imagine, Khabbab has been a Muslim for many years now, 15 years. I never saw you pray the way you prayed. This was on the night of Badr. And the Prophet ﷺ ajad. He said, that's true. He said, إِنَّهَا صَلَاةُ رَغَبٍ وَرَهَبٍ سَأَلْتُ رَبِّ عَزَّ وَجَلْ فِيهَا ثَلَاث خَصَالٍ. He says, last night my salah was a salah of hope and a salah of fear. And it was a special salah that I devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for three things. فَأَعْطَانِي إِثْنَيْنِ وَمَنَعَنِي وَاحِدَةً. I asked Allah for three, he granted me two, and he did not give me the last request. What was this? سألت ربي عز وجل أن لا يهلكنا بما أهلك به الأمم قبلنا. I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to destroy us like other nations in the past have been destroyed by floods, by disasters. قوم عاد, قوم ثمود, Nuh alayhi salam's nation. فأرسلنا عليهم الطوفان. Allah says we sent floods and destroyed them all. Nations that were completely wiped out. فأما عاد فاستكبروا في الأرض بغير الحق وقالوا من أشد منا قوة أولم يروا أن الله الذي خلقهم هو أشد منهم قوة وكانوا بآياتنا يجحدون. Allah says in Halaqa, الحاقة ما الحاقة وما أدراك ما الحاقة كذبت ثمود وعاد بالقارعة. فَأَمَّا ثَمُودُ فَأُهْلِكُوا بِالطَّاغِيَةِ. Thamud, Allah says we destroyed them, but one loud shout of Jibreel. فَأُهْلِكُوا بِالطَّاغِيَةِ. وَأَمَّا عَادٌ, the people of Ad, أُهْلِكُوا بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ عَاتِيَةٍ. High, thundering, winds. We're talking about tornadoes just coming and just literally picking up the bodies of people of Ad and smashing their heads and colliding them. أهلكوا بريح صرصر عاتية. One day, sometimes a hurricane comes or a tornado, it goes by and it just goes to the next community. Imagine a hurricane or a tornado just around the same vicinity and just spiraling around the same area over, and it's just not going anywhere. Just right on in the same community. You hope it goes and it goes ahead, and the next community gets hit by the windstorm, and the next community. But imagine ريح صرصر عاد سخرها عليهم 7 ليال, 7 nights, 8 days, وثمانية أيام, just rotating around the same community, making sure not one leaf on a tree, not one branch, not one tree trunk was still standing, not a human, not a structure, everything was destroyed. سخرها عليهم 7 ليال وثمانية أيام. Imagine just rotating in the same location. حسوما فترى القوم فيها صرعى. Allah says, He gives a description of how bad it was. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it because sometimes people don't realize that the storm was itself very dangerous, but the results, Allah also places a result there, because Allah said we destroyed Ashab al-Fil, but ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل. Then He also says, what was the end result of these enemy of these elephant, the army of the elephant? كعصف مأكول. It was like someone who ate something and then after eating it and swallowing it and chewing it, they spat it out. The remains of something chewed up in a mouth and spat out, that was the remains that was left over of these strong, powerful army that came from Yemen, Abraha. كعصف مأكول. Allah says, كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية. أعجاز نخل خاوية. Whenever you see a windstorm go by, and especially here in Michigan, we see them once in a while. You see trees on the road, but we're talking about uprooted trees, literally uprooted and flipped upside down, and the roots are on the top and the heads are on the bottom. A'jazu nakhlin khawi, empty. Just sometimes you see a patch of trees, and all of a sudden you've never seen the opposite side of that field because they're long trees. Allah says nakhlin khawiya. All was flat, you could see the entire ground because there was no tree standing. نخل خاوية. فهل ترى لهم من باقية? If the trees could not stand, you think there was anyone else remaining? I mean, what are you talking about? Nothing remained. So this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in the Quran. So the Prophet ﷺ made dua, oh Allah, please, do not destroy my ummah from such a punishment. Khabbab radiallahu anhu narrates this narration. And then I said, I made this فَأَعْطَانِي Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this dua. وَسَأَلْتُ رَبِّي عَزَّ وَجَلْ لَا يُظْهِرُ عَلَيْنَا عَدُوًّا مِّنْ غَيْرِنَا. That do not allow an enemy from outside of us, impose upon us and to overwhelm us. Meaning that an enemy comes and destroys this whole ummah. Like we had Genghis Khan, but we're in a way that Islam is completely wiped out. That will never happen. Islam will always be there. Parts of Islam and communities will be hurt and afflicted, but Islam in its totality will never be wiped out. Allah SWT promised that. And the last one, أَلَّا يَلْبِسُنَا شِيعًا فَمَنَعَنِيهَا. That they should never, oh Allah, there be a conflict and rift and fighting within the community, the Muslim community. And the Prophet ﷺ asked Allah this, that make there never be a division within the community of Islam and the larger community of Islam in the future, because we saw other nations who had a conflict within, how they themselves destroyed themselves within. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not grant the last dua and the last request because the لِيَمِيزَ اللَّهُ الْخَبِيثَ مِنَ الطَّيِّبِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always have truth and injustice, justice against injustice, truth against falsehood. And sometimes there's falsehood that will seep into the mindsets of Muslims, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to also clear that. So the last dua, remember these three du'as that Prophet made, two of them were granted, and the last one was held. Brothers and sisters, this was Khabbab radiallahu an. He lived all the way till the age of 73. He supported the Prophet ﷺ and served the Prophet ﷺ, and he was a very big advocate for Islam. I want to share two narrations with you, stories, and then we'll call it a night, and we'll take some lessons from this. When Khabbab first became Muslim, a group of the Sahaba came to him. Just there were a few, 4 or 5 of them, right? And maybe few accepted Islam after. They came to him, and he wasn't a very respected person in Mecca. And they said, "Ya abshir ya abd ikhwanuka taqaddama alayhim ghadan." So one of the Sahaba or companions of Muslims said to Khabbab, we got some good news for you. Tomorrow you've been requested to come and join your brothers in their place, wherever they are. They're kind of hosted somewhere. They're inviting you to come to maybe Dar al-Arqam and sit with the Muslims and the larger, small community that was already in its process of growth. So when they said this to Khabbab, Khabbab radiallahu anhu started to weep, started to cry. I love this narration. And people are like, you've been invited over and you're crying? Why are you crying? He says, "Ama innahu laysa bi jaz'un." I am not scared I'm not crying because I'm scared that you're inviting me over to your, secret location where Dar al-Arqam is. But وَلَكِنْ ذَكَّرْتُمُونِي أَقْوَامًا وَسَمَّيْتُمْ لِي إِخْوَانًا. Subhanallah. He says, people gave me these, very insulting titles in the past. This is the first time that I've been called, that your brothers are calling you, inviting you over. I'm included to be a brother. I'm accepted as your brother. And that made him cry. Isn't that profound? Brothers and sisters, there's so many people like that in our society that they don't have a structure to give them love and comfort and a home and a community and a family. This is why when people accept Islam, they automatically find a family. And if we're able to insulate them with the way the Sahaba insulated Khabbab, he started crying. They would never abandon us. I mean, that's true brotherhood and sisterhood that we find in Islam. He says, "Sammaytum li ikhwana." You call me your brothers? This is unbelievable. I cannot believe this. And this is how Islam grew. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. الْمُؤْمِنُ الْمُؤْمِنُ أَخُو الْمُسْلِمِ الْمُسْلِمُ أَخُو الْمُسْلِمِ لَا يَظْلِمُهُ وَلَا يَخْذُلُهُ وَلَا يَحْقِرُهُ. A brother and sister, Muslims are brothers and sisters. So this interesting narration, literally when he was told that your brothers are inviting you over tomorrow, it's like, wow, that's something I never heard in my life. In the African American culture, there are certain things which are very interesting. And one of the things that when I speak to some of them, recently I was speaking to one brother wanted to get married, and I asked him, so he was incarcerated for many years, maybe 18 years or something. He came out. He was given a long time, I think life, and he was freed on compassionate relief. So now we talk about marriage, and part of the discussion was, okay, he's like, Sheikh, can you do the nikah? And I said, who is she? He said, she's a Christian, she's not a Muslim. So we went back and forth. She's thinking about accepting Islam. We thought about the option, the possibility of her accepting Islam and how we can help her. And she was interested. And I said, do you have any, and he's an adult, he's a 40-year-old man, I said to him that, have you have anyone else, scout her just to see who she is, so you can get a second opinion, from your own family and your community? He said, yeah. He said, a while back, she brought me some food, and he travels a lot across the states. So once she brought me some food, and my mom was there, and my mom hugged her. I'm like, so your mom hugged some random sister that you're interested in marrying? What does that mean? How is that hug, mean anything? In our culture, Muslim, like Arab culture and the Desi culture, hugging and kissing it, adi, like we kiss everybody, I mean, the same gender we're hoping, of course. So he said, my mom hugged this sister that I'm interested in marrying. So I said, what does that mean? He said, brother, Shaykh Imam, in our culture, from African American culture, he says, if your mama hug anybody, that is big deal. That's a sign of acceptance. I'm like, wow. That's a sign that your mom is down for this marriage to happen. Like, this is that the way they express their acceptance. And my mom doesn't hug anybody. They don't hug people. Like a lot of times we don't know that. They're just like they're different in that aspect. And even Desis don't hug as much as the Arab community. They definitely don't kiss anyone. They have a hard time kissing their own children. But it's just different cultures. So brothers and sisters, it is interesting that the Khabbab is just told that he's accepted as a brother, and right away, given that love and that care and acceptance. We don't know small things that we do for people that are going through so much difficulty, and especially United States of America. The family structure is so dilapidated that if you can, advocate to be a friend or a family member to someone, it would mean so much to them. In America, particularly, if you were to advocate to become their friend and their brother, and this is genuine, people are always scared. People are always scared that they might be taken advantage of. That's always, I have to say this: the Prophet was taken advantage of many times, right? But he didn't stop. I mean, because you've been taken advantage of once or twice, people always say, "Don't, someone's gonna take advantage of you." I mean, khalas, what are we here for? I mean, if we're believers and someone's taking advantage of us and we can still handle ourselves and we're not abused to the extent that we're jobless and homeless and we don't have any health. I mean, someone takes money from me, doesn't give it back to me. Someone takes my car and comes back 10 days later. They took advantage of it, but we still have a second car. I mean, then we stop giving up. I'm not saying that we should just be naive and just do anything for anyone, but this concept that someone step over me and they misuse me, and thus I've experienced this before and I don't want to do it anymore. I don't trust anyone. That is completely wrong, because the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba were stepped upon multiple times, and they continue to do it. We'll always have a good heart to help people. Brothers and sisters, I want to conclude by sharing one last part of Khabbab bin Arad radiallahu ta'ala an. Khabbab radiallahu an, he was sitting on his deathbed, and he was very sick. And the Sahaba said, "Dakhalna ala Khabbab bin Arad fi mardihi." He was sick. We entered his room. Inna fi hada, he said quickly, he said, "Inna fi hada tabut 80,000 dirham." He said, in this box, in this chest, there are 70,000 dirhams. 80,000, 80,000 dirhams, silver coins, like and dinar, so many gold coins, silver coins, 80,000. Can you imagine how much money he had in just one chest or one safe? And فَوَاللَّهِ مَا شَدَدْتُ لَهَا مِنْ خَيْطٍ وَلَا مَنَعْتُهَا مِنْ سَائِلٍ. He says, I'm going to tell you the truth. I've never closed this chest or this safe. I've never locked it. I never put a seal on it, وَلَا لَهَا مِنْ خَيْطٍ, not even a thread. I didn't put anything on this. وَلَا مَنَعْتُهَا مِنْ سَائِلٍ. And this chest has always been open to anyone that came to ask. Any beggar, any needy person, it's always been open. Right? ثُمَّ بَكَى. Then he started crying. So he is so rich, but he said, I've never said no to anyone because they needed help. These were the last two stories I wanted to share with you. He says, مَا مَنَعْتُهَا مِنْ سَائِلٍ. Anyone that has come in the past, my $80,000 are sitting there one by one. In dollars, this would be more than $500,000. He said, just come by, just, whoever needs it. Anytime there was a needy person that would come, he would just say, come on, take some money, go ahead. And when he talked about that wealth, he all of a sudden started crying. And the people said, ما يبكيك? What's making you cry? He's أبكاني أن أصحابي مضوا ولم لن تنقصهم الدنيا شيئا وإنا بقينا بعدهم حتى ما نجد موضعا إلا التراب. He says, subhanallah, he says, what makes me cry is that I had companions who lived before me, and the dunya never came to them. The dunya, this much money, this much wealth, this much prosperity was never near them. They just never had it. Now I have so much wealth. The only way I can get rid of it is that when I'm buried into the dirt. I have so much wealth. So he started thinking about the wealth that he had and the blessings that he has and the accountability that he might have on the day of judgment, and it made him cry. But at the same time, he really had this treasure of his open to anyone that was in need, never locked it, never protected it, so he can help the world. But he was crying, thinking, what will happen on the day of judgment? And this was the same attitude of Abu Hurairah. One day Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was cleaning his nose with a cloth of silk, a very expensive handkerchief, like just cleaning his nose. And he said, Bakhin, Bakhin, ya Abu Huraira. Oh, Abu Huraira, there was a time you were on the ground, flat on the earth because the pangs of hunger, because of the extreme pangs of hunger that you had to suffer. And you couldn't even stand up. Now you have silk in your hands just to clean your nose. How wealthy are you? And he said, we should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said that. One day, Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anh, he was sitting and he asked for some water, just water. And this happened with Umar, many people. He asked for some water and somebody brought water and they mixed honey inside the water, asad. They put some honey inside and they sweetened the water for Abdurrahman bin Auf. And knowing that Abdurrahman bin Auf, a very rich person, honey is just, it's not a big deal. And they place it in front of him and he sees it and he kind of tastes the difference. He says, and he started crying. He said, there were people before me, they were better than me. مثل مصعب بن عمير, like Mus'ab bin Umair and the Sahaba, they never tasted the sweetness of this dunya. They never tasted the luxury of this dunya. SubhanAllah. This is water and honey, not like the things that we drink, the smoothies and the caramel macchiatos that we have and the Starbucks drinks that we drink. Just simple honey and water. And he started crying. He says, we're living in blessings. There were people before us that didn't even have this. And he started crying. He said, I am afraid. He said, أَخَافُ أَنَّ حَسَنَاتَ عُجَّلْنَا فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا. I'm afraid that the struggles that we have done in the past, in Makkah, in early Medina, with the Prophet ﷺ, that Allah is compensating us in this dunya for our previous sacrifices. Ajib, subhanallah. He said, I'm afraid that all my reward for all the good that we've done with the Prophet ﷺ is being compensated here, and there will be nothing for us in Akhirah. And he did not take the next sip. Just stopped taking the next sip. He just didn't drink. He couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, he was just crying so much. Brothers and sisters, this was Khabbab, a man who was tortured and, almost killed. And the Prophet ﷺ told him that be patient. A time will come, you will see something much different than what you're witnessing today. And the sixth person to accept Islam, he is blessed with wealth and knowledge. Sahaba are come to him for knowledge. Very impressed by this person. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, placed him in the front. And at early Makkah, there's one story that I have 4 minutes to complete. Inshallah, I want to finish by 8:30. That I wanted to share with you. Early Makkah, there is where I talked about the Prophet ﷺ competing to balance the struggle between the elite of Makkah and those who were the middle or lower class people of Makkah. Now, of course, social status it is a complex situation in this society and also in the previous society. Islam, it builds this bridge between that. It merges these societies by saying that Allah does not judge you on the basis of your wealth or your race or your language. Only one thing is accounted in front of Allah. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Arrogant people don't like that. Racist people don't like that. People who think they're better than someone don't like hearing that. Like, I am better. Why? How can I not be better? My dad is so much richer than them. My mom is so much richer than them. I drive a better car. Why am I not better than them? But the reality is, عجبت من معجم بسورة كان بالأمس نطفة نذرة وفي غد بعد حسن صورته يسير في القبر جيفة قذرة. What car are you boasting about? That if you lose control, it goes right into the back of a tree and it has no value. What skin, what race, what language are you boasting about? You didn't even earn this. You're not white because you chose to be white and that makes you better. Nothing makes anyone better because of their skin color or they're Arab or non-Arab. I mean, God gave us this body and we are positioned in here. Nothing makes us superior to anyone else except for taqwa. And once taqwa is instilled into the heart, right away, people start to see themselves less, and I'm not saying insignificant, but they see themselves more accountable than other people. They start to see their own mistakes. They start to see their own faults. They start to question their own self, and they never have the ability to look at someone with an insulting eye or belittling eye. So there was this challenge where in Makkah, where the Prophet was trying to accommodate the people of Makkah. So now, there's sometimes people try to find ways what can we do to have, for example, these people come to this halaqah? What can we do to have this class of people who come to this halaqah? What can we do? Should we do it in a park? Should we do a barbecue? Should we do, they don't want to come to the masjid. Can we do someone's basement? They don't maybe like Arab speakers. We can get an African-American speaker, or maybe they don't like this speaker. They can bring some hippie type of speaker, some hipster who can kind of wrap his speech through or her speech. What do they want? They want this. I mean, they want someone that can, there's ways to accommodate different orientations and different segments of the community. So sometimes people become so eager about that they're able to start to like compromise their principles to accommodate the larger community. So I'm just giving these examples, okay? I mean, it happens all the time. Be like, if we bring this person and he's, he or she's like this, they're a little bit different opinion, but we can accommodate another group. Listen, you don't need to accommodate anyone. You just need to accommodate God and his prophet. And if they don't like it, that's their fault, not your fault, right? We don't need to compromise our principles to accommodate a person who has no principles, right? If you want to do it on your own. Don't enforce it on a community or on a committee as an organization. Like it's not our responsibility to compromise our principles for from some group of a community that does not want to come to the masjid or does not want to participate in the youth programs. If you want to do it on your own goodwill. You go ahead and do it without imposing such compromise principles on the larger community. Like maybe they will come if there's music. Go fly a kite. If they're going to come because there's music, then you go sing with them and bring them to the masjid the next day. Like, what do you mean? People's intellect very, loose. Anyways, so one of the conditions for the elites of Mecca to accept the Prophet ﷺ and listen to him was that they will not sit with the poor. They will not sit with the slaves or the ex-slaves or they would not sit with their own slaves. These are like, why should I sit? Like sometimes as a teacher, we're going through this back and forth. There's a sheikh that wants to teach a book that I haven't studied, but my students also haven't studied. And can I be humble enough to sit in the same class with my students that I taught for 5 years and learn the same subject they're studying? It's a difficult thing to swallow. Of course it's not a big deal. Knowledge is knowledge. You have to be humble. So these are masters who unjustly treated their slaves. They're saying to the Prophet ﷺ, we're ready to listen to you. And the Prophet ﷺ is very eager, like, whoa, if you're ready to listen to me, inshallah, I can convince you to accept Islam. But they're saying that we will not sit with Khabbab. We will not sit with Bilal. We will not sit with Ammar. We will not sit with Suhaib. We'll talk about them later on. Nope. So the Prophet said, okay, we'll make a separate, session for you. How many separate sessions do we need to make? Middle school, high school, young professional, women, Ammus, Arabic, English, Urdu. What the heck are we doing? Everyone needs a special segment. Allah guide us, just when we start to, I mean, you could have it, not criticizing them, like if you start to, compartmentalize these programs, then it takes away from the essence of the community. There should be something more, welcoming and accommodating and, diverse. It's okay if young people are there, older people are there, they can learn from each other. And if something is said that's not understood by the young people and it's only understood by the adults, good, they understand something, they can hopefully, and sometimes we underestimate the intellect of youngsters when we're speaking to them. They understand things better than adults sometimes. They're so smart. No, they might not understand. We need, Allahu A'lam, we try our best to accommodate all genders and age categories. And also like types, there are different types of Muslims now. They're the ill Muslims. You heard about the ill group, the ill Islam, You ever heard about the ill Islam? Don't go into it's a cool ill. Anyways, so they tried this with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, okay. And I can fall for it too because I'm eager for my community. I'm eager for the program, for the youth. The Prophet ﷺ also wasn't doing this out of, any form of prejudice or favoritism. He was just eager to have Uqba, Abu Lab, these guys become Muslim. They're going to be safe from the fire of hell. And that's the bottom line. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed an ayah to the Prophet ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, nope. وَلَا تَطْرُدِ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُم بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. To never leave the side of these young people, these Sahaba, these people who are not so significant in the eyes of the leaders of Makkah. Never leave their side. Don't make a special segment just for the elite or the rich or the famous or those who you want to accommodate because they're influential. No. ما عليك من حساب من شيء وما من حسابك عليم. You can't do this. You cannot. You're not responsible for that. And if your job is supposed to إنما عليك البلاغ, your job is to convey the message. And if you do, check this out. If you start to accommodate the elite and the special category of people, this is what's going to happen, and you start ignoring those who are simple and humble and don't have a social status in the community. You would be considered a zalim. Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ, defending Khabbab, defending Bilal, defending Suhaib, the people who had no family, who were tortured, who were slaves or ex-slaves of the community. Allah says, if you abandon them, you would be an oppressor. Today, brothers and sisters, how many Khabbabs have we abandoned? Morally, ethically. How many Bilals of our community have we abandoned? This is why when I talk about the conversion series, these people didn't just convert and all of a sudden they got Islam. No, there were so much lessons that we have to learn from them, that these were humble black people, marginalized communities, that the Prophet ﷺ was taught, you cannot even ignore them for your thought of a larger good. You have to give them their attention. They want to come and listen, they're going to come to the general gathering if they want to learn Islam. One of the biggest reasons why the leaders of Quraysh did not accept Islam was arrogance. That's it. So you have some people like that. It has to be a scholar that's my type. It has to be from my city or my language or my country. Anyone else is not, eloquent or wealthy or knowledgeable enough to, this arrogance is one of the biggest barriers for a person to embrace Islam or accept the truth after becoming Muslim. So even when they're Muslims, they're learning Islam, they pray Salah, but to accept the wrong that they're doing and the good that's out there and to bring in their life, there's an obstacle. So the Prophet ﷺ learned this from the message of the Quran. No. Even the marginalized community needs to be given equal respect and never turn your eyes away from them. And if you do, you will be considered a zalim. Brothers and sisters, if we were to live with the Prophet ﷺ, you would notice that he was spending most of his time with the poor people of the community, the simple people of the community. Why don't people do that? Because when it comes to spending time with people who are simple, humble, poor, a lot of times it hurts your pocket, It's very demanding. It's demanding, it hurts your pocket. It is easy to serve a community that in end of the year will give you millions of dollars in donations. There's an incentive. Okay, they're serving, there's money coming, you're serving rich people are supporting the cause. And what about you serving a cause and then giving your time and your life and getting nothing in return for it? And that was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He gave, Bilal gave him nothing back. He helped Khabbab, nothing came back. He helped Suhaib, nothing came back. That's where he got a salam. Allah sent salam to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq because he gave everything. He gave, nothing came back. And Bilal radiallahu anhu asked him a favor one day, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did not accept. That's when Bilal asked him a simple favor. He said, allow me to go to Sham, Syria. And because that's where the Muslims were growing and they were going against the Romans, and at the same time Islam was spreading. Islam had already spread in the Hijaz area, Makkah, Medina, Khaybar, and those entire, you can say, current Saudi Arabia. Now towards Yemen, to Sham, Islam was just spreading there in the time of Abu Bakr. That was new. So to go there would be da'wah and effort of da'wah and tabligh and the work of deen. So he said, let me go there. And Abu Bakr Siddiq says, you can't go. He said, you are the mu'adhin. Why can't you go? Because you are the appointed caller of prayer. You're the mu'adhin of Medina. Why? You can't leave. It's like, Imam saying to the committee, I got to go for 1 year to serve deen in Guatemala, So what do you mean? Why are you going to Guatemala? Just stay here. He said, no, there's a community that just opened a masjid and want to go Guatemala. Like, the community was like, no, this is your community. So Abu Bakr Siddiq was right. Like, this is your community. You're the mu'adhin. You can't leave. And Abu Bakr loved Bilal radiallahu anhu. And Bilal radiallahu anhu says, Okay, so one day Abu Bakr gets on the khutbah, radiallahu an, he's standing there, he's sitting, the adhan is what I call the adhan. So just picture this. Abu Bakr says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sits down. Bilal is about to call the adhan. He goes straight to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu an. He says, Ya Khalifat Rasulillah, oh, the ambassador, the vicegerent of the Prophet sallallahu you know, the Khalifa, the Caliph of Allah, Prophet sallallahu أعتقتني لله أو أعتقتني نفسك. Did you free me for yourself so you can benefit from me, or did you free me for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu says, أعتقتك لله. I emancipated you purely for the sake of Allah. I have no interest in anything. I don't want to benefit from you. I have no benefit from you, right? So Bilal radiallahu anhu says, إذن إذن أن أخرج في سبيل الله. Allow me to go in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, serve his deen. And that's why Abu Bakr was called out. And Abu Bakr said, Khalas, you can go. I give you full permission. You can leave and travel. So brothers and sisters, giving to the community and not getting anything back. Our wallets being spent, our time being spent, our resources being spent. And what happens when we spend it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies our life in khair and barakah. And we're all doing this at some capacity. But remember, there's a marginalized community always in society. There's a forgotten community that are ignored always within our community, within the larger Muslim community. It is important to look back at how the Prophet ﷺ was able to, glue a society of the rich, elite, and the poor, and the humble, and the simple, and made one ummah. One ummah. And that ummah prospered, and that's why we are Muslims today. And if we stay divided, unfortunately, we will lose ourselves, we'll lose our children, and we'll lose the Muslims who are practicing, because it's important that we support the cause together. Again, Jazakumullah khair, brothers and sisters. This was Khabbab bin Arat radiallahu ta'ala an, from simple background to such a great leader, a scholar, and of course, a person the Prophet loved, who served Islam and died serving Islam at the age of 73. Brothers and sisters, Jazakumullah khair. So I'm as you can see, I'm looking towards the marginalized community of the Prophet ﷺ and trying to take out their life, how they converted, how they were kept in Islam, and they were given respect through Islam, and their contributions to Islam, and the way their demeanor, their personality, all that they did. It's just so interesting. I'm interested and intrigued in that society now because of what's happening. Really, it's so hard to glue someone to Islam and to make them feel that part of this community, this culture, without giving them your heart, without being genuine to them. And that Prophet ﷺ didn't do it with one, not two, but a whole ummah, and they loved him. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the love of the Prophet ﷺ, the character of the Prophet ﷺ, the akhlaq of the Prophet ﷺ, and remove our faults. We have imperfection, but Islam is a beautiful religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and hopefully we can embody it at a better level and impress Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which can reflect on the larger community in the world. Again, Jazakumullah khair, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, if you are coming for Salat al-Jum'ah tomorrow at 2 p.m., please wear a mask, bring your own prayer mat, and hopefully we can see you in person. And please stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.